Hi, folks. Welcome back. This is episode 55 with Thrive and Aligned Healing Podcast. And today we're excited to be joined with the healing couple, Dr. Cory ND and yoga instructor Jessica. And they're going to share with us a little bit today about their work, what they do, how they offer it within their community, and a little bit more on how they stimulate the healing of the mind, body, and soul, mostly through breath work, right?
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to talk a lot about the breath.
So will you guys share with us a little bit about what you do and your approach in working with folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, Carmen, we've had a relationship for years. We've known each other for a long time. I'm a naturopathic physician at heart. So anything that you know about Carmen, I'm very similar in the way that I practice and the way that I did preach to my patients at the time. I would say that a couple of years ago, my life was very different. I was practicing in Arizona, had a practice up there in Scottsdale, actually. And we did a lot with healing the body with traditional methods, really hot cold therapy. It's also called hydrotherapy. And I was lucky enough to bump into Jessica because her uncle actually did the build out at our clinic. And we had a mutual friend, which was the uncle's daughter, Rachel Tarman. If you're listening to this, she's probably heard this story a million times, but she connected us both. And ever since then, me and Jessica have really we went on a personal discovery mission for looking at different healing modalities, different techniques and trainings. And Jessica actually found this type of breathwork technique that we teach, which is called 3-part breath. It's also kind of a cousin to transformational breathwork. And she actually took a class inside her yoga teacher training. And she called me up one night and was like, hey, all this amazing stuff happened. I had all these visions. I let go of all this emotional baggage, this anxiety that I was holding on to. And she was using a lot of very colorful language explaining it. And I remember being on the phone, sitting in Arizona going, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Either you're really crazy, this is true, and I'll join you. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And so that was the first breathwork teacher training that we ever did in that specific breathwork technique modality. And honestly, the rest was history because we ended up doing a workshop. 22 people showed up, and then they asked us at the end, when are you guys going to do this again? And we had no idea. So then we started doing workshops every single month. And that was about 3 years ago. And so we did workshops every single month, and it's just really grown from there. So this is a technique that is probably one of the most powerful techniques that I've ever seen or experienced. And it is a long form breathwork technique that allows the client or patient to actually unravel their own stuck energy, their own trauma, their own psychosomatic patterns. And it really is a beautiful thing to watch and see. And it's something that I have believed in so much that I've stepped away from my private practice. And this is what I do full time. Awesome. So that's a little nutshell of what it is.
And I would jump in and say specifically how our mission is to really help people who are high achievers, people who are, busy professionals, entrepreneurs, people who are just go-getters, people who have a big mission on this planet. And most of those people are just go, 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 go. They're very in their masculine energy. They're like, get shit done. And
type A.
Yeah. Many of us are guilty of this. If you're listening, maybe you have a hand up, you're like, yep, that's me.
That's me.
And that's often how our society operates. And through the work that we do, we show people another way to live and exist. And oftentimes people come to us and they're like, their breath is super shallow. It's up in their chest. They're like, sometimes they're even holding their breath because they have so much going on. And when we guide them through breath work, they tap into their body and their heart because they're operating mostly from their mind all day long. What's the next thing I have to do? What's the next thing I have to do? The to-do list. And when they can take really intentional breaths in this way, they travel all the way from the mind, all the way down to the heart. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize how much I was holding on to. I didn't realize what was even there for me.
Mhm.
And they can release their emotions that have been bottled up that they didn't even have the time to like feel. And then they heal. When we feel it, we heal it.
Mhm.
And we've led this for thousands of people all over the world at this point. And we've witnessed people heal so much and work through so much that's been holding them back. And they didn't even realize it was holding them back. So when they step out of breath work, they're like, oh my God, I feel more alive than ever. I feel so calm and focused. And they actually show up even better in their business, in their career, in their relationship, the things that they were already doing, but they're showing up as fully them.
Mhm.
And imagine the power that you have when you do so.
Mhm.
There's so much freedom in that. And it really extracts the full potential out of people. And I love seeing that.
So most of your trainings online now, or do you guys just do them all in person, or?
Yeah, so because of external factors due to the pandemic and COVID, we have essentially it's a two-part training because a lot of healing now is happening online. It's happening virtually. For most people, they're doing it on Zoom. So the first half of the training involves people learning how to facilitate one-on-one sessions with their clients or patients on Zoom. And so we really help people do that, as well as hopefully in a couple of months when things start to open up more, the second half of the training is actually going to take place in person in Austin, Texas, which is where we live now.
Okay. My life coach was in Austin, so you guys are in a hot spot. I don't know if you've met Brooke Castillo, but
We have not,
No.
but we would
Yeah.
love to meet her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fairly new to Austin. We moved here in November of 2020. So it's still new to us. And we're really excited to keep building community here, which has been interesting during these times, you know, to be in a new city and meet new people has been interesting to say the least.
True. So are you guys currently, it sounds like you're currently targeting trainers or like folks to broaden their net to be able to work with individuals, or do you also work with individuals?
We work with mostly individuals, actually. This is the first round of teacher training because we've been asked over the years, you know, how do I learn from you? People have incredible breakthroughs personally, and they feel so called to share with other people. They're like, everybody's got to know about this. My mom's got to do this, my sister, like my friends, like people at work, like everybody needs to know about this. How can I share this? And finally, we just said, like, okay, we have to listen to the call. We've got to, you know, we get to train other people so they can share with the world, because we can only impact so many people on this planet, just the two of us. Online, doing things online has made it much easier. We can impact, you know, hundreds at a time, which has been amazing. However, if we really want to spread this far and wide, we get to train people so that they can go share with their community and impact people that we never could. And so that's led us to, you know, really answer that call. And we're finally doing that and leading our own trainings. However, we mostly work with individuals. So we do that in private sessions. We do that in group programs, classes, things like that. So, yeah.
So is this similar to Kundalini breathing? Is there
I would say that there's some parallels because without like actually doing the technique with you, most people they'll hop in and they'll do the technique for the first time, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, how do I even explain this to anybody in my family? Because really what it is it's your own internal experience. And of course, if you want to hop in, we can talk about biochemistry, physiology, what's happening in the body. But on the surface level, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a peak emotional experience. Because the way that the body operates is that the body remembers. We think that the brain is this big memory bank, but really the body is the emotional memory bank. And it is usually suppressed or hidden or covered up in some way. And so in order for that emotional memory to be released, you have to create a peak experience. So that means breathing in a consistent pattern in a very powerful, intense way for an extended period of time to really nurture the body, to allow that, whatever that trauma is, that stuck emotion, to unravel itself And it can come out in many different ways. It can come out physically, it can come out emotionally, and come out sometimes spiritually. And so why we love this technique so much is it hits all those touch points and allows the breather to be their own healer. And I think that is something that Carmen believes in. That's something, Kim, you probably believe in as well, is really instilling the responsibility in the person that is receiving the treatment. Because we live in a society, we live in a medical system that unfortunately programs people in the opposite way.
Oh yeah, we talk, I'm very candid. Like, we live in a society that has adhered to a victim mentality in everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with your question about the Kundalini yoga, I have to say we've had a number of, and I'm a yoga teacher myself, we had a number of yogis, yoga teachers, yoga studio owners who are like, oh yeah, like breath work. Okay, yeah, I've done, pranayama. I'm familiar with the breath. And so I got this. And they come out, they're like, I have never experienced anything like that before. That was a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So it's very, and most yogis are used to breathing in and out through the nose. This technique in and out through the mouth. So it activates a whole lot more than what people experience in a traditional yoga class. And most yogis are blown away by that.
Yeah. And to describe it a little bit to your audience. So breathing in and out of the mouth really is very activating for the body. And so this is not a technique that we recommend, because people always go, should I breathe like this all the time? Absolutely not. Very intentional, because we're trying to create that peak emotional experience. So breathing in and out of the mouth actually activates the part of our nervous system that is involved with the sympathetic response. So it's also called fight or flight. And so we're doing it in a very controlled and intentional setting. So nothing necessarily bad happens, but we're really ramping up all of your systems so that it can create the space to create that release. Because when you breathe in and out of your nose, which is what we recommend 23 hours out of the day, if you want to do 1 hour breath work every day, is more of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's relax, digest, calm down, heal. So this is a very intentional technique, but the whole point is to ramp everything up so that we can create that space to heal.
Is it similar then to like Wim Hof?
It's similar in a way. Wim Hof is it's in and out through the mouth. It can be. He's okay with facilitating in and out through the nose, if you're okay with it. But it's for Wim Hof, it's done in stages. This is one continuous technique for about 25 to 35 minutes. Okay. And so it's long form. And there's also other things that we cue in. So it's a complete experience. So now, even though it sounds very simple, we take people through different stages as well. And it's something that we have talked about behind scenes, that we're like, when we're on podcast, should we share about it? And I really feel like it's a disservice to your community, because they're going to have more questions, but essentially it's this technique. And that's about as much as like we want to say about it until they can experience it themselves.
Yeah, I just want to create like a kind of a clarifying, because when you say breath work, right, there is a lot of us that have been entrenched in holistic healing, right? And so we think like, yeah, gone to yoga, I've done Kundalini, I've studied Wim Hof, like, got you. This is just another branch of this. So I'm just trying to like clarify, like, this is different, and there are different systems in terms of breath work. One is not the same from all of the rest of them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's one of those things where in the holistic model, we're all trying to get to that same point. We're all trying to get to that, I call it the blind spot in your healing. It's like what you're not even aware of, that you're not even aware of. It's like what's behind the rearview mirror that you can't even see. And so this technique really is, in a way, it's almost like a hypnosis, because you're having somebody breathe in a particular pattern over and over and over again. And it gets you out of your conscious mind into your subconscious and even into your body. And so really what we're physiologically trying to do is we're trying to get the brain to sync up with the heart. And when you have that coherence with this technique, that's when people say, I feel peace. Like, I actually feel peaceful. I actually feel calm. I actually understand what it feels like to feel self-love for myself. So it's an experience rather than talking about it, which it's fine. Like on the surface level, that's like talk therapy. It's like Gestalt therapy. It's Freudian, right? It's, of course, you have to nurture the mind, but getting the mind and the body to sync up, actually have coherence, which means like frequency, energy, are locked in. That's when somebody feels like themselves. They feel like they've experienced themselves in a new way, or they've come back to themselves. And I think just in medicine in general, it's like, here's a pill.
Right.
Here's a medication. You can keep being the same. Everything that you did that led up to that point where you now have symptoms, stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, all those symptoms, you can just take this pill, this anti-pill, this anti-insomnia pill, this antidepressant pill, this anti-anxiety pill, and everything's going to be okay. And of course, I'm taking a broad brush when I say that, but that model really takes away the sovereignty of the patient, of the person who needs that healing, to actually find the root cause, like I'm sure you guys talk about all the time. So what this type of breathwork technique does is it creates the space, just the time for them to sit with themselves, breathe, get out of their mind, and actually rediscover themselves in a new way. So it's been a beautiful experience to see that. And I would say that, as far as this technique compared to other techniques, it's all getting to the same source. I find that this one has been the most profound for me personally, as well for the people that we work with, and it gets them there the quickest.
So then can you talk about, like, physiologically, since you're a doctor, like what it's doing? Like, is it the pituitary gland, or not the pituitary gland, the pineal gland? Like, what's going on from a
So if you want to talk more about the brain, so with this technique, you're breathing in and out of your mouth, right? So it's more sympathetic dominant. We're creating an intense experience. You're probably going to start sweating. Another thing that can happen is you're increasing the amount of oxygen in your body. And there's a balance of oxygen to carbon dioxide in the body. And usually that physiology is very tight, because the body likes to be very tightly regulated. And so when you breathe in this pattern for 30 minutes, what usually ends up happening is you increase the amount of oxygen that is usually in your system relative to the carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide goes down, oxygen goes up, because you're breathing in a lot of air. And what can happen, and there's a lot of technical words with this, but what can happen is you create you create a temporary respiratory alkalosis. Meaning, and alkaline is usually a word that people are like, oh, I heard that, like alkaline water, like alkaline foods. Okay, so you're creating a temporary alkalosis in your body. That physiologically can have a lot of different effects. That can actually help release neurotransmitters in the body, dopamine, serotonin. It can also have an impact on your pineal gland. So your pineal gland is a little gland that sits kind of at the base of your brain. It's also called the third eye. So if you imagine like pointing in between your eyebrows and kind of going halfway back to the center of your head, it sits literally at the center of your skull, in the center of your brain. And so this technique, what it does is when you breathe in this pattern, it actually pumps cerebral spinal fluid up into your brain. And it actually squeezes your pineal gland based upon the research. When that happens, there's a possibility to release what's called DMT. This is a substance, it's kind of considered the spirit molecule, the sacred molecule. It's a molecule that's been studied in science in near-death experiences. So they find when people are approaching the end of their life, their body will release DMT, and people have, spiritual experiences where they meet God, they see that white tunnel, right? All those kind of things. And so in my clinical experience, watching thousands of people do this, there is the possibility to release DMT from the pineal gland and create a whole host of physiological effects of healing, of meeting their ancestors, of connecting with loved ones, of healing relationships with them and themselves. And so that's where we really stretch from the science to the experience. And we really don't know what's happening, but physiologically, you're getting into an alkaline state. There's a possibility of releasing DMT. And then the other thing that can happen is when you breathe, you're breathing with your diaphragm in this technique. And your diaphragm is literally one of the biggest muscles in the body. Most people just kind of write it off. And it's completely controlled by what's called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is our 10th cranial nerve, as Carmen knows. We went to medical school together. And it controls your parasympathetic tone, which means your rest and digest tone. So when you really, really work your diaphragm, breathing in and out of the mouth, getting into this sympathetic state, when you stop breathing, your body wants to drive itself back into homeostasis. So you have this overwhelming push from the parasympathetic nervous system to stop, to rest, digest, and relax. So people have this amazing feeling of calm, relaxation, and peace that they've never had in their life. So we're creating this real peak experience followed by your body going, wait, we have to go back into homeostasis. And having that experience, people come back into themselves and really experience whatever they need to experience. So I hope that answered your question.
So I have another question. So when your body's driving you back into the parasympathetic nervous system, what neurotransmitters or hormones, what's being released there that's driving you back into that?
Well, I mean,
calming sense.
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, based upon what I learned in medical school, like cortisol is our long-term stress hormone response. So epinephrine, norepinephrine are the short-term. So more than likely you're releasing norepinephrine, epinephrine at some point during this experience, because and people do. So why we facilitate this one-on-one and in groups and in tight controlled settings is because most people interpret that drive, that sympathetic response is something bad. But all we're doing is we're creating an internal artificial response that usually people respond to it with external stimuli. So what I'm saying is everything's safe, but your body is sending off signals that things aren't safe. And so we coach you through that process, right? And so those type of neurotransmitters are being released. And then my guess, I'm not sure because there hasn't been any solid research on this. My guess would be that either cortisol, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin are released at the end because people feel so connected. They feel so inside their bodies. They feel so self-aware that I would imagine that is the type of response that's happening. But there hasn't been any research on the back end of what neurotransmitters are released at the end, unfortunately.
I would also almost hypothesize that we're probably getting a dump of GABA and dopamine. As GABA, as creating that relaxed, like almost, you didn't quite say it, but in my mind, I'm imagining almost kind of like that relaxed, blissful state. We see high amounts of GABA and dopamine come into the picture. So I almost hypothesize that that's also happening at the end of the session.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with that.
I'm so glad that you clarified because I love Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to connect with my pineal gland. And I was alone by myself in my house. And like, I was getting there and then I had like a panic attack. So I'm glad that you like clarified, like you should not do this by yourself.
Well, especially
your brain is like, oh no.
Because our body, our brain actually in those states when we're breathing, it actually doesn't know the difference between an external threat and an internal threat. So it treats it the same. When there really is no threat. So whatever that you were
so real in that moment that there is on you by yourself.
Absolutely.
Right. Which is why we usually recommend people, if it's their first time or their first few times, to either do a private session with us or come to a class. Just to do it with a certified breathwork facilitator so that they do feel safe enough to go into their experience. However, once they feel comfortable with the technique, their body's like, okay, this is the breath pattern. I know what to expect. Okay, if these things happen, I know that this is normal. It's safe for me to be in my body. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, I think, especially as women, do not feel safe in their own body. And so when we can be there to support people through that process, and then they like develop a new relationship with themselves to know that, hey, I am safe, that they can give themselves that own safety, then we recommend people do it on their own once they've reached that point. And we have pre-recorded courses where people can do, because a lot of people ask, the number one question that we get after breathwork is, oh my gosh, I feel so amazing. I want to feel this way all the time. Can I do this on my own? How do I do this on my own?
Yeah.
So we created a resource called the Breath Bundle, which we can talk about if you want. But we've created that resource so people can do it on their own once they feel that safety within themselves. And that's been really empowering for people.
Yeah. But I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe too.
Yes.
Yeah. His technique is actually a little less intense. If you want like a relative comparison, actually a lot less intense. But yeah, did you ever end up going back to the technique?
No,
Stages? No, okay.
No, yeah,
Okay.
like after that panic attack, like my brain has made that association. And so
Yes.
I just knew, like, if I'm going to do this again, I have to do it with other people, because it's created this neural pathway now that says this isn't safe to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is one of the dangers of this technique, is like making sure you're aware of that. There's nothing wrong with it, but yeah, when you come up against that edge and the body's alarm systems go off, it's really helpful to have someone there to coach you through that process. And then once you're through it, you're through it.
Yeah.
Like the body can't write that neural pathway because you're aware. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because that is something every once in a while people do experience and then associate. And we try to dispel that as much as possible. Yeah.
What I've dominated the conversation. So Carmen, your question.
That's all right. I'm excited that the way that you described it. So, and Jessica, I thought you described it beautifully, of how you're helping folks reconnect your mind to our heart, right? Because we get stuck in this. We're analyzing things, right? Like even our thoughts, we talk about all the time on our podcast with our folks, our thoughts and our beliefs, and that comes from the mind, right? And it creates this physical relationship with our body. And so being able to connect those and help for people to see that connection, I think is very important. And so I love that the way that you guys address that, because it really sounds like you're doing, it's mind body work, right? Through the breath. And so you have a unique perspective, and that you're engaging the mind and the body at the same time, right? And so we've talked about, we also have a book club, and in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, that doctor talks about different ways to address trauma and pain in the body and how we hold on to that physically, whether it's a head down approach or a bottom up approach. And you guys are combining that at the same time, right? Yeah. Because we often talk to folks about, breathing, more just like diaphragmatic breathing, right? And meditation and, movement. But you guys have compiled your experiences to create this very unique experience for people. That's very exciting. So I appreciate you guys sharing that with us.
Yeah. It's like getting back to our primal nature. That's what I always say. Yeah. I mean, like, especially, we were talking about this in our teacher training yesterday. Women, especially, they really struggle with their voice, and they also, I've just found, there's certain parts where sometimes we have them make noises or even scream. And we, as just a human race, think we're so advanced, but it's like we're only 10,000 years being this form of ourselves, and we're like all other animals. They scream, they roar, they make calls, and we have lost that innate sense in ourselves. And so bringing out just the basic things of movement, breath, vocalizations is so healing for people to just tap back into themselves. Yeah. So I completely agree with you, Carmen. And it's almost like we're just bringing back the old and making it new again. And we have forgotten so much. So it's just a relearning or an unlearning process to really uncover who people are. And that's what we're up to.
Yeah. That's very exciting.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really exciting. I mean, just from just a physician standpoint, like, I've done a lot of different things. I had the clinic in Scottsdale. As you know, Carmen, I had a lot of joint injuries leading up to medical school. And so I did a lot of orthopedics and injecting stem cells and autologous products and all this fancy stuff. And I have found that breath work for me personally has been one of the most healing modalities as a facilitator. Watching people breathe, you can learn so much about them, because when you breathe in this technique and you give it 100%, things are just going to bubble to the surface. And this breathwork technique is a mirror for your life, because how you breathe is how you live, and how you live is how you breathe. And I think we've gotten that paradigm mixed up, where we experience something and then we breathe like that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I think another way to think about it is our breath is connected to our emotions. And there's been a beautiful study on this, where it looked at people's breathing patterns. And then they asked, okay, what emotions are you feeling? And so it's interesting, because what happens oftentimes is we feel a certain emotion and we breathe a certain way. Right. But so we allow our emotions and our external environment to take over. We allow that to dictate how we live. However, we can do the opposite. We can breathe in a certain pattern to then evoke a certain emotion.
Right. Which is what we're doing.
So people are taking control.
In society, we believe that our emotions come from the external.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So then, of course, we think that our breath and the way we breathe, that we feel very disempowered as Americans. I will only speak because that's the only place I've ever lived. Like, everything is an impact coming from outside, impacting us internally, and we're not aware that it's internally. It's where everything is created, right?
Exactly. Right. And that's why people feel like I feel out of control. I feel stuck. So people feel like I feel stuck.
Everything's happening to me.
So if you can shift your breath, you can then shift how you feel, get back into the driver's seat.
That's been the secret, really, for what we do and what we create and what our clients create. Is they turn the script on it and they say, okay, now I'm going to take more time in my day to breathe in this pattern and breathe in this way. And that's what creates the emotional shift, because then the driver comes from inside rather than outside.
Yeah, and it's more tangible and like actionable, right? Like, as a coach, I talk about, like, our emotions come from our thoughts. We have a thought, creates a neurological, right? Like, neurons firing creates an emotion, which is kind of heady for people. They're like, what? Right? But you're giving them something tangible, like, no, like, let's just go to your breath and action and pull back in.
Yeah,
exactly. And I would say, if you're listening right now, some people go like, okay, well, where do I start? Maybe people don't feel ready to like jump into a class with us. People are like, that sounds terrifying to me, or that sounds a little weird, or not so sure about that. And I totally get that. I was completely skeptical of breath work 10 years ago when I first got introduced to this whole other world. And so I would say, start with just noticing how you're breathing right now. Breath awareness is so powerful in and of itself. And most of the time, just by becoming aware of your breath, naturally it starts to deepen. Naturally, you're like, oh, okay, I'm breathing, and for most people, really fast, really shallow. Okay. So just the awareness alone starts to slow down, deepen the breathing. And most people find calm just in that. So becoming aware of your inhales, of your exhales, when you're driving, when you're washing the dishes, when you're in the shower, start to become aware of your breath throughout the day and notice, begin to slow it down. That creates incredible shifts. That has profound effects if you can do that on a daily basis. I even have in my phone a reminder that says, take 3 deep breaths. The more that we can do that, I think our society can really shift just by that alone.
They're not listening if they do not think this is weird. 55 episodes in of listening to us.
Perfect.
The people think things are weird have already long gone.
You lost those people. They're back at episode 1.
True.
Love it.
Well, let's see. Kim, do you have any other questions?
I don't.
I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to share with us if people are looking for more, if they would like to attend a class or learn a little bit more, even about your breathwork bundle, how can they get a hold of you?
That's a really great question. And thank you for opening up the opportunity to do so. Because we feel so passionate about sharing this work with as many people as possible. Like that is our mission until the day that we die, until like we are no longer on this planet. And so right now we're not offering classes. We were offering a lot of in-person events and classes and workshops, especially when we lived in San Diego. And right now the main way to work with us is through our breath bundle. And it is just thehealingcouple.com/the breath bundle. You can learn about it there. It's essentially a whole bundle, a whole library of like our best of guided audios. So you can be able to just pop in your headphones and be able to listen to us guiding and coaching you every step of the way. You'll get to experience the 3-part breath, which is what we've been talking about majority of this conversation, and also other breath practices. If you feel like, you know what, I want to just start really simple. I want to start basic. Let me just get like in tune with my breath. There's many other mini breath practices to start. And then when you're ready, you can dive into the longer form breath journeys, which will always be there. And we found that to be just a really empowering resource for people to experience their own breath and be able to do it on their own whenever they need it most. When you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling, really anxious, or I'm feeling like I've got a lot going on today. Well, you don't have to wait for a class. You don't have to wait to, sign up for a session. You can do that in that moment if you need it. Or if you're like, I feel amazing, because I think sometimes people associate these practices with like, oh, I just need to do it when I feel stressed or when things aren't going well. But the thing is, you can actually do it when you're feeling great, and just expand that to feel even more elevated. That's what I love to do it. It's like, okay, like things are already going great, and now I just feel like on top of the world. So, there's those moments too. And so you can find the breath bundle there on our website, thehealingcouple.com. And for those people who want to go deeper into their practice and they feel called to share it with the world, we also have our breathwork teacher training, which is also on our website, thehealingcouple.com, which is an 8-week online training with like an in-person component like Cory.
So whenever this podcast gets released, the next training is most likely going to be in the fall. So you can hop on our website and join the wait list and be a part of that.
Yeah. And for those who maybe don't feel comfortable jumping into the breath bundle, or like you maybe had an experience similar to Kim, where you're like, okay, I'm not sure if like I feel comfortable doing this on my own, even though everything is guided by us and we definitely hold you in these audios. We also do have one-on-one sessions. And so for some people that is a better fit. We're like, hey, I need a little bit more support. We can do that online or in person if you are in Austin. So that is available for people as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And all that will be in the show notes. So the links will be in there.
Beautiful. Yeah. And if people have questions, they just want to, experience a little bit more about this. We also are on Instagram, @thehealingcouple_, and we answer every message, and we love connecting with people. So please do not hesitate, to reach out to us, and we're happy to support you in any way there as well.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's just a nice little treat on a Monday morning. This is just so nice to start the day this way and to connect with both of you. So thank you for giving us the space to be able to share. And thank you for the work that you do in the world to help people heal from the inside out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, you guys. We appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and our listeners. And we hope to hear from you again, hopefully. And I think we'll wrap it up today. And we'll put it in the show notes, thehealingcouple.com. And feel free, if you guys have any questions, to reach out and let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, friends. We'll see you guys next week.